Hi there, and welcome to video 33 of the Flipped History series. This video is on the constitutional crises that plagued Canada throughout the 1980s and early 1990s. The first learning intention is to indicate the demands made by linguistic groups and the Quebec nationalists, and the success criteria is that you can indicate the demands made by linguistic groups and the Quebec nationalists. The second learning intention is to indicate the means used by the provinces to influence the federal government. The success criteria is that I can indicate the means used by the provinces to influence the federal government. The third learning intention is to indicate the reaction of the governments of Quebec and Canada, and the success criteria is that you can indicate the reaction of the government of Quebec and Canada. And finally, the last learning intention is to evaluate the relationship between the governments of Quebec and Canada. So the success criteria is that you can evaluate the relationship between the governments of Quebec and Canada. So our story about the constitutional crises in Canada begins in 1976. The Parti Québécois, which if you remember was created by René Lévesque back in 1968, stunned the country by winning the election in Quebec and became the government. So this was, a pretty devastating thing for Anglophones, but for the French-Canadian nationalists, it was pretty good. And they advocated for more rights for Francophones in their own province. The result was a law called Bill 101, the Charter of the French Language. So this law, which is still in effect today, is the law that prevented English from being on signs, and is the one that restricts access to English education. Now, it's been mocked in the Anglophone community as unnecessarily harsh, but it did have some consequences. One was that many English corporations pulled out of Montreal. Montreal was the corporate head of Canada, so many large corporations had their head offices in Montreal, like Sun Life Insurance Company, for example. And now today, of the top 500 companies in the country, only 75 are headquartered in Quebec. On the other hand, the French language has been strengthened in Quebec, but there are fewer Anglophones, so it is a balance. The other thing that the Parti Québécois promised was a referendum or a vote on sovereignty association, basically separation. So this pitted the Premier of Quebec, René Lévesque, against the Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. They each took up their cause. Lévesque was the head of the yes side. The no side was at first headed up by the Quebec Liberal Party leader, but he didn't really do such a good job, so Trudeau stepped in. In a famous speech in Montreal, Trudeau promised that a no vote would mean that they would reopen the Constitution and try to find a new spot for Quebec. The result of the referendum was a resounding no. 60% of people voted against Quebec separation, with only 40% voting for. Lévesque's dream seemingly had died. Now, in 1981, after the referendum, the premiers and the Prime Minister launched into rounds of constitutional negotiations. What happened was that Trudeau negotiated with the other premiers, left Lévesque out, and came to an agreement, one that would bring the Constitution home from Britain and would include a new Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So, in 1982, the Queen signed in the Constitution Act of 1982, which officially brought the Canadian Constitution, which included the British North America Act, back to Canada and made our Constitution our own. The fact that Quebec didn't sign in led to more debates and more consultations. The new Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, who was elected in 1984, promised to bring Quebec into the Constitution, and they launched a number of meetings which culminated with the Meech Lake Accord, where all the provinces signed. Meech Lake would have given Quebec distinct status. However, all of the provincial legislatures would have had to approve this agreement. Unfortunately, well, or maybe fortunately, it depends on your point of view, I suppose, the Manitoba legislature did not approve it. One man, Elijah Harper, held it up. He was a Cree member of the legislature, and he said, "I will not support anything that doesn't have a new deal for Aboriginal people in Canada." So, Mulroney went at it again, and another round of consultations happened that ended up with the Charlottetown Accord. The Charlottetown Accord was supported by the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, the New Democratic Party, all 10 premiers, major Aboriginal groups, women's group, pretty much everyone supported it, except for a small Western-based party, the Reform Party, which was brand new at the time and included very young Stephen Harper, and the only other major opponent to the Charlottetown Accord was the old man himself, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Trudeau gave an impromptu press conference at a Montreal Chinese food restaurant known as Maison Egg Roll, where he basically took apart the Charlottetown Accord piece by piece. It really showed his disdain for the Accord that he gave his press conference at a Chinese food restaurant. And the resulting referendum, or vote, that happened across the country was a rejection. The Charlottetown Accord was dead. Now, this meant that the separatists in Quebec, the Parti Québécois, took this to mean that it was a rejection of Quebec by the rest of Canada, and they launched another referendum. However, Canadians rallied to the support of their Quebec brothers and sisters, and there was a huge unity rally in Montreal, where the giant Canadian flag that you see at the Senators' games made its first appearance. Now, the result of the vote was close. The no only won by a few 100,000 votes, 50.6%. However, it really was the end of these constitutional debates that were endless, right? It went on from basically 1976 to 1995, almost 20 years, and kind of culminated with the Clarity Act in 2000, which said that Quebec needs a clear majority in order to have another referendum. And we haven't had a referendum in the 20 years since this happened. Thank you for watching this video. After you're done your notes, please consider the following essential question. What was the relationship between the various interest groups and the state?